Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm joined by Rashmi Papneja, founder of Eunomia Pharma Services. Rashmi has built a career at the intersection of business, healthcare, and compliance, helping pharmaceutical companies across Europe to establish strong governance frameworks, foster integrity, and embrace operational excellence. With years of experience leading in a highly regulated and complex industry, she brings a unique perspective on what it takes to grow a business while staying true to the core values. In this episode, we will deep dive into her entrepreneurial journey, the challenges she has faced, and the leadership lessons she has learned along the way. So, Rashmi, I'm so glad for you to join the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Siddharth. I think it's a privilege for me, honestly, to be speaking to you today. So yeah, I'm excited, a bit nervous too, but let's go with it.
Thank you so much. So let's kick off. If you could give us a little more insights about your personal life and business journey, so our listeners can get to know you a little bit more.
Sure. So I think so that you did a really good introduction. So that is my area of business. I provide healthcare compliance. So obviously, pharma and biotech are one of the most regulated industries after finance. So it's heavily scrutinized, heavily governed. There are a lot of regulations, self-regulations, and it's only increasing over time. So, and I think the role of, and from, for example, compared to the last 20 years to today, we
Mhm.
have seen the compliance officers' roles evolve significantly, and the rate at which compliance roles are increasing, the rate at which governance is increasing. We see that we see that there is a level of what do you say, the controls are tight within this industry, but at the same time there are equal measures being taken to ensure that the industry moves towards this direction. And like integrity is built as a core part of a business. Governance frameworks are considered for organizations, and a culture of compliance can be built and maintained. So I think this is where Eunomia comes into play, and we help pharma companies. We support pharma companies build that compliance framework. And the other thing I want to add about the business is, like right now there are a lot of law firms, there are a lot of other kind of service providers available to the pharmaceutical industry. Where we can differentiate ourselves is we are a group of compliance officers outside of the organization, but for them. Like we are like an external representation of them. So we can be really flexible with the kind of models that we can offer to them, of collaboration, whether it's a very small company who wants to maybe, wants support with maybe two or three activities in compliance. We take that versus some company who's much bigger, or a much bigger pharma company who is building a centralized model and wants us to come in and support them with their transparency framework or other activities. So there's a range of service offerings that we can consider. And I think we're obviously still exploring, we're still trying to identify. But I think our main motto is to make sure that there's a huge need. For example, so that within the compliance area itself, compliance officers work for 16 hours a day. They're really stretched. Right. And it's a lean department. It's a support department. We don't bring in a revenue for the business. Right. So in the last 16 years, I have seen the pain that, compliance departments undergo. So I think that by providing that external support, we can actually help them. Yeah. And I think you also mentioned about outside work. So for me, I think outside work, as you know, I've got a little bit of injury, but it's getting better.
Yeah.
I enjoy tennis. I love playing tennis. Enjoy watching it. One of my favorite players is Novak Djokovic. And last year I had the privilege of being able to watch Wimbledon. So I was really happy about that.
Wow.
And yeah, I keep applying to the ballot every year, but last year I could sit in the center court and watch the final match. To maybe
Amazing.
receiving the ticket this year. Let's see.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing journey as well. And good to know about your business. And you've got also the name Eunomia is quite unique, right? You have
Yeah.
inspired by the Greek. What does it mean again?
So Eunomia, basically, in the Greek mythology, there are various goddesses. So amongst that, Eunomia means the application of integrity or culture within obviously like in the Greek culture, but it is obviously then we have applied it to from an organizational perspective.
I love that because that's so true for compliance, right? And I've got a follow up question for you. So, for example, for listeners who don't know anything about compliance, how could you explain them in like the simplest way? What does compliance mean?
So compliance means adhering to the regulations. So basically, compliance means adhering to something. So in this case, it is more being compliant to your country specific or your country specific or your industry specific regulations.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. So it's about like following the regulations basically for
Yes.
businesses. Okay.
Yes. Exactly.
Right. And what are the common misconceptions that people might have or businesses might have for approaching compliance service providers like yourself?
Yeah. So interesting question, Siddharth. And I think that's something that maybe compliance officers and lawyers do face because sometimes, although, as I said, the role has really evolved and now we work very closely with the business. They approach us. So, for example, if they're planning a challenging campaign or they've come across a situation, in most companies, they tend to get compliance involved from the beginning. But even today, there is this misconception that compliance are just, they're just policemen. They're checking if we're doing things right or wrong. So they're going to scrutinize us. They're going to, report to the business about us and they'll make our situation worse. So that is why I think, and also some people think that we're a lot about paperwork and rules and we try to stop things. Yeah. So they don't believe that actually compliance is a true business enabler. And if you work with us, we can actually support your business and we can actually help you move forward. That's our objective. But I think that is missed sometimes.
Yeah, and then later on when they're in a compliance issue, then they reach out and it's too late, isn't it?
When it's too late, exactly, and that's the sad bit of the like the approach. But yeah, I think so that it is evolving, and I hope it will evolve in the right direction where people, the misconceptions will be minimized, and people will start trusting or believing in compliance a little bit more, and they'll start approaching us. So, and I think for some companies, like for example, if they're really small, like some companies have one molecule, or they're in a state where they've had a successful research and they are eventually going to be sold to another biopharma company. But even sometimes they're not even aware of what their compliance requirements are, or they think it's too expensive, rather just stay away from that, rather than stay away. Like they don't believe that the investment in compliance will actually leave them benefits in the long term.
Definitely. Definitely agree. Um, Next, I want to deep dive about your business journey. So, so Rashmi, before you started this business, you had a full-time job, right? So my question to you is, what really inspired you to take the leap of faith, leave that corporate job, and go into the most difficult job or business that is starting your own business, right? The most difficult thing. So,
Absolutely.
what made you do that?
Yeah, interesting. So that I think I did my MBA in international healthcare management. I knew maybe even before I did my masters that I want to do my own business. Which area,
Okay,
what I'm going to do, I never had an idea. But ideas, obviously, yeah, I've been in the pharmaceutical industry over 16 years now myself, like whether inside or outside supporting them. But I'm still very close to a lot of pharma companies and I work with them. So for me, I think the most important was that somehow I knew that I'm going to be supporting pharmaceutical companies as my role evolved. Initially, I was thinking more medical information, pharmacovigilance, but then as I saw the industry grow, my areas of experience broadened, and then I knew that okay, my area of interest is healthcare compliance. I enjoy this. I enjoy working in these areas. I understand the business difficulties or the nuances, whether it's managing audits, monitoring, running compliance
right.
committees. I kind of got a very broad exposure in this area, and I knew that okay, this is where I will do my business, this is where I will support the pharmaceutical industry.
Right. And why do you think you always had that thought that you always want to start your business? Where was that coming from?
So my
What would you
my I
say?
think maybe my dad, he's a businessman. He always did his own thing. Like he always set up his own, like he had his own transport business, totally different from pharma. But I think that's where it comes from. I think it's an instinct that I never aspired to be a businesswoman, but I've always, it's kind of that path has been carved out somehow. So that's where I'm going.
Right. And since your dad was a business entrepreneur, so what maybe lessons you learned from him that you still like apply to your own business or your own life? What would you say?
Yeah. Absolutely. So that I think I have learned. So my dad was a businessman. He into transport, as I said. Like he stayed in one area. He supported like some big companies in his time. But at the time when maybe and I think that was his thought process. Everybody gets their enlightenment at some stage in life. By the time he learned that he needs to scale, and he doesn't just need to sit with one area, but maybe he needs to move into other areas of transport or expand his business into other countries. It was a bit late, right? So I think for me, I've applied that learning from the beginning, that I don't want to restrict myself to only the UK regulation or only UK as a country. I want the business to be scalable. I want it to be like more flexible so that it can be adopted in various different methods, and it can be utilized in various different countries across the globe. So we're not just restricted to like one regulation within the ABPI, or one regulation within France, for example. We wanted to keep it more global.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think what you said is your business is agile, right? That's the way to
Yes,
put it. Okay, I
absolutely.
like that.
Yeah.
And so coming back to your own business now, what are the maybe challenges you faced while you were building Eunomia, and maybe what lessons you learned from that?
Yeah, sure. So that for me, obviously there are learnings. There are quite a lot of learnings. Maybe a few I can share with the time we have. But
Yeah.
I think one is, when, for example, manage for the tough period was managing the time when the client contracts or work streams were uncertain. So, like for example, somebody tells you that, okay, there's a need for service, and then they disappear for a month. They're not contacting us, and constant follow ups. Like within our team, there is one person who just follows up, because that is the level of commitment and perseverance you need to constantly chase people, because there is a need for them, but it is a need for us as well initially, because we are trying to establish ourselves. We know that they might be busy with 10 other things within the business. So let's,
Yeah.
continue with that gentle nudge until the point they eventually come to us and, work with us. So that initial bit was definitely challenging. And I think the second most important thing I can highlight is the rate at which regulatory landscape is changing. So there are so many regulations within the pharmaceutical industry. There are also overarching regulations like anti-bribery, corruption in a country, which are equally applicable to the pharmaceutical industry as well. So to keep yourself abreast with so many changing, evolving regulatory landscapes, understanding what their interpretation could be, how they have an impact on an existing process, yeah, it can be quite a bit sometimes.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, definitely. That's so interesting. You've got a particular person just to follow up. Wow.
Yeah.
And what would you say, like, what has been your toughest period that you have faced as an entrepreneur, and what kept you going through that? Pretty sure you might have many.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so that, as I said, this period where that business is coming, but it's not until an SOW is signed off, the business is not there. That is, I think, the most tough period, because you believe in your business, you take a decision, you move on. But to make others trust you, believe with you, and work with you, that is where the biggest challenge is. And to keep your team motivated as well, that no guys, don't worry, it's going to come. So you're waiting for that external stimulus, and also you need to manage your team internally. So it's you juggling a lot in the middle. It is difficult.
Yeah. Wow. So what would be your advice for like entrepreneurs? Like how can they build better trust with their clients or business partners when they're going to a meeting, or how should they come across so that they can build the trust with that particular person?
I think so that the most important is build your relations. Like in today's world, I think we're really involved in our on our mobile phones or the digital world, etc. But I think making that genuine of effort of going out and speaking to somebody, whether it's a network meeting, going out and seeing an old peer or a mentor who supported you at a time when you really needed it. I think that really helps, because they remember you when you go to them, and they do support you when you need it. So I think never miss on that opportunity of the network, or going back to your peers or learning from them, learning from their experiences. That really helps. And I think the conference that I went to, like yesterday, for example, the biggest one of the senior leaders, she was there, and she said that the biggest learning is not probably from the people who are speaking in the panels and all the big, the drama that is going on the stage, but it's actually the time you get in the coffee meetings, the time you get at the lunch break, because that's when you get the opportunity to network with your peers. and the opportunity to learn. So I think keep learning from obviously the systems and the process side of things, but at the same time, genuinely put that effort into relationships because they really support you. They help you grow. They give you the confidence.
Definitely, definitely. I agree. And then on the same question, but just flipping it on the side. So, what are the things that people do that they come across that not trustworthy?
I think, so that the major thing in our industry is reputation depends largely upon trust. Yeah, it's very much so. If I have done a work for
True.
one, yeah, if I have, for example, if my company has delivered successful work or, they've successfully delivered on a project for one company, they just recommend and you're going to next three of them. Yeah. So sometimes because it's such a small industry, it's really small, honestly. And everybody knows each other. So you work for one person, they go and tell 10 other people. Of them, maybe three of them will work with you. And then, this chain kind of continues. So although, as I said, the initial setup can be a challenge, slowly you do see that, there is a path.
And I think reputation is like so important. Like one mistake spoils the entire reputation, right? So,
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. That one
And
mistake is a big thing.
so, talking about mistakes, what failure taught you the most valuable lesson in your career?
Yeah. Good question. So that I have had failures. I think of the, no, we do so many projects and I've been, I think for the past almost 10 years, I've been on my own, either consulting and then establishing Eunomia. I think one thing I have learned is one size doesn't fit all, right? Each company has their own very specific nuances in the way they operate. So you need to be extremely agile in the way you understand what a company's requirements are. The stakeholders think differently, they have different budget constraints, they have different ethical and cultural constraints. So you have to consider all of that. For example, if I work with a big pharma, I supported them to set up an infrastructure. We could hire external support. I was there. It can be, it's really at a big scale. But if you have to deliver the same project to a really small company, you're going to be using really minimal resource under very what do you say budget with strong budget constraints. You still need to deliver, and that too successfully. So there have been some pitfalls there have been some learnings for me during my journey, and I have learned that I think the most important thing is listen to your client, listen to them first, understand their need and build your, because models can be flexible, right? Definitely. I think that's something I mentioned even from the setup, and that flexibility is something that's inbuilt in our processes. Depending on the size of the company, the scale of it, what budgets they have, how many people they can give us for support, we then, like build a framework around it.
So, your main lesson here is to listen to the client, understand the problem, and then frame it accordingly, rather than jumping into models and using a cookie cutter approach for each company.
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, I would love to deep dive into your leadership journey and the culture you have built with your team members within the company. So, what's the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Yeah. So I think one of the best leadership advice I've learned is lead with integrity even when no one is watching. So a reputation, yeah, really. And I think that's not easy. It's that because if you feel nobody's watching, I can do anything. But as I said, the industry that we work with, it is too strongly governed that belief won't really help. And integrity has to be inbuilt at every step of the organization. And also your reputation is built in the small moments, or the small achievements that you have as much as the big ones.
Right. So, what's the advice on some for entrepreneurs who can start working on the integrity? Because integrity comes from I think it's come from the values, the way you've been
Correct.
brought up, etc. So, maybe
Yeah.
what's your advice on for entrepreneurs how they can be more, maybe do work with integrity?
Yeah. I think to do work with integrity is basically doing the right thing. That's what integrity means. But it's also important to understand your stakeholders. Like, who are your clients? As I said earlier, who are your clients? What do their internal team look like? What are the regulatory bodies you're working with? And listen more than you speak. I think that is, as I think I'm reiterating the same point. But these are advices that I got from my mentors as well. That, calm down, listen to what they're trying to say, and probably and also so that there's a difference between listening and hearing. So I think that you need to come to a point where you're listening and you are resonating with their wavelength. That's when you will success, because I think you have all the AI Fathom and all the various tools through which you can record a call. But that human understanding of reading in between the lines, that's really important, and that's the key to get your business, because you relate, then you can relate to them, you can relate to their pain points, and you're not just doing a tick box exercise for the sake of it.
Right. And I would love for you to elaborate more on that. What do you mean, like, to be on that wavelength? Because there's so many lessons that people say, "Oh, I'm listening," but they're not really listening, or they're ready for the next response. So I want you to explain more, like, how can we be in that wavelength?
Yeah, I think what I mean by the wavelength is try and understand. So when you're talking to them, obviously you're excited to sell your business. This is what we can offer. That is what we can do. But I think you need to stop for give your company overview, but then stop and listen to the client. What are their pain points? Why are they reaching out to you? And whilst giving you those pain points, they might also mention some other things which will really add value to you when you're building your proposal for them, or when you're trying to gain a deeper understanding into their processes. I think that like, for example, as I said, if it's a smaller company, or if it's a company with very minimal with really minimal resource, and obviously you can support them, but you'll have to really go granular and very simple with them to understand their structure. It might not even exist. Maybe they're just doing things paper based still in today's world, and I've seen it, right? So you might have to come down to that ground level from talking AI today to going paper based, right? So it is having that sensitivity to their requirement.
Yeah, definitely. So, for example, if you're with a person to come at to understand their situation and not just like explain everything about AI that you mentioned. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that answer. Adapting to their style, basically, isn't
Yes.
it?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you, Rashmi. So, looking back, what principles do you find essential for running a successful business?
Yeah, yeah. So I do have principles that, and I think they are core to what I do. And I get up in the morning and I read some of these four, because I think some moments in life have been tough. Some have been really challenging. And I think to bypass them, to go through them and move on, there are certain ethos or principles that I follow. And these are pretty much a read. But yeah, you can ask me more questions relating to them. But I think one of them is push through awkwardness and uncertainty without giving up. So obviously, when you're trying to set up your own business, you're trying to sell, right? There are situations when people are not ready to buy. So it might come across as awkward to them and equally to me. But you just have to keep pushing through the awkwardness and uncertainty without giving up. And then embrace tough situations as a chance to grow. And then I think, as I've constantly been mentioning throughout the podcast as well, the opportunity to take in challenges and to be adaptable, or to build adaptability and flexibility around them. Yeah. And then reframe discomfort as a stepping stone to success. So discomfort. So for example, if I'm in a situation of discomfort, that means I will have to do something to get out of it. It's not going to be easy. And organizations constantly go through it. And as discomfort, it's good to go through that situation of fear, that situation that you're not really comfortable with, because that could lead to growth, that could lead to innovation and a different way of thinking. Now, it reminds me of that man of the movie where the man Martian, where he goes on the moon and he builds water, he creates water. So, because he's been put into that situation that he will not have any water, he has to survive on the moon. How is he going to do that? And that there comes innovation. So, I think it's really important that sometimes a situation of discomfort can be a stepping stone to success.
Wow, I love them. Thank you so much for sharing. So, I would love to deep dive into like one of them. So, you said embrace being awkward. So, could you maybe give an example on how you embraced being awkward and you pushed through that? Because I think it's quite important skill to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Like so that I can give you a simple example, like what I sell to pharmaceutical industry services. At the moment, it is pure services. We don't have any system or like AI tools or something along with it. So I'm competing with a lot of big service providers in the industry. So it's not easy. Sometimes I go to people and they're like, "Oh, we are already covered for this. We have like 8,000 people in Hyderabad, supporting us with these operations. So we don't really need you." And sometimes people could be like, "Oh, we've already given a service provider this the service. Now you maybe you can come to us in a year's time." So sometimes it I go to people, I approach them because my responsibility is to sell my business and be out there. But I do come across situations where people can be what do you say, resilient, or they are not. I am in a situation to sell, but they might not be willing to buy. So I have to have that patience and that perseverance to wait until the time my client is ready to buy and I am in the right place for them to buy from me. So that level of patience is needed in unless you have an innovative solution and you're coming up with a totally new technology and something that the industry is waiting for, you're lucky. But you may not be in all situations.
Right, makes sense. So being awkward, like, do you also worry what other people would think when you're being awkward? So how do you get through that battle as well?
I think so. Again, that can be something that I see as awkwardness because I know like there's a group of people and I have to go and talk about my business or how it is working and stuff like that. It may feel awkward to me, but for the other person, they might see it as she's proud of what she's doing. She wants to come and sell to us. She's happy to talk about it. So there are two ways of looking at it. It is awkward for me to go from coming from a science and MBA background to totally going out and discussing my business with people. So it's different, right? But I am pushing an agenda and I'm putting myself in a discomfort situation. But it is challenging and it might lead to innovation. So I'm doing it.
Yeah, and it has led to innovation, right? So you have your own successful business which is growing. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. Really good advice. Thank you for sharing
Thank you.
that. And as you did mention, you have learned a lot from your mentors. So were there any mentors or experiences that shaped your leadership style?
Yeah, a lot. I think so that I've been really lucky from the beginning. I've had great leaders. I've had an opportunity to work with. One of my first mentors. He was, really senior, but he always made sure that he provides me the right feedback. So for example, if he put me on the stage as well in front of an audience of 100 people, he would still, constant. He would put me into awkward situations, but I would deliver, and then based on that, he would give me feedback that okay, you've done XYZ really nicely. However, things could have been improved or you could have done better. And this point about slowing down, listening, trying and being at the same wavelength with people, I have learned from my mentors. And then also, for example, some of my mentors have been technically savvy. So I've learned a lot of like I've had a opportunity to get a lot of technical or system process understanding from them. Some are great leaders in terms of the way they talk and the way they present their agenda to the business. So that because see, honestly, the areas that I've worked in, so that they are support systems, right? They don't generate revenue per se, but we're constantly working with the sales team or we're working constantly with a lot of people within the business. But to be able to sell your agenda to the people, like the what do you say, the ethics, the committees or the senior leadership teams, it can be challenging. So I think through them also I learned how to push your agenda slowly to get it there.
Yeah, I like that. And mentors pushing like us in discomfort situation, and that's quite important. Getting that feedback as well. So, thank you. Well said as well. And you also mentioned that you have a team when you're pushing people and they're not answering back. You're also telling your team, motivating them that we'll get there, we'll get there. So how do you like foster a culture of accountability and integrity in your company? Because I know you said that you have strong values as a person, as a founder, but how you cultivate that within your team and within company ethos?
Sure, sure. I think what I've tried to do is I try and see if like, for example, if my leaders who were with me, even if they were in weaker situations, they would always know, for example, if they had a bad news from the senior leadership or, there will be redundancies announced soon or the business isn't doing well, they would give us this news, but in a way that, it to still protect us. to keep put the shield around us that okay, this has happened. However, we are in this situation where you will be, you will be taken care of, or the situation won't harm you. And plus, they would stand as such good role models that even if there are issues or concerns, it wouldn't come downwards. Like for example, the top down approach. So if something could stay up to their level, they would keep it. Only in the worst situations, they would cascade it downwards to the team, right? Likewise, I try, like whatever, if there is a difficult situation, there is a challenge, if I can overcome at my level, it will not reach them, right? But some things, if they're losing motivation, or the initial area times of patience or perseverance, then we had to like literally have calls daily and have some, like lectures on how we can motivate each other, or what are the other things we can do to get more business. So I've been lucky so that my team who stands with me, they are also equally business savvy, so they understand that these situations will happen, we will grow with time, time will change. So I think they have always stood by me.
Yeah.
All I can do is appreciate.
Wow. So talking about appreciation, like, so how do you like celebrate and motivate your employees, celebrate the wins with them, and how do you like motivate them?
I think celebrating wins, once a month, when we get a new project or something, we tend to, usually because all we're quite of a lot of us are remotely based, then we tend to get together in the evening with a glass of wine or something and a snack, and we chat, we have a good time together. We talk outside of work, and we have that, like the team time between us. Or we even play like dumb charades or some games as well sometimes.
Yeah. Have you been to any tennis socials with your team yet?
I have to. I should, right? I've not planned it yet, but
Yeah.
it's a good idea. Maybe I should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe paddle. Paddle is quite
It's
in
quite
for
in these days.
business
Yeah.
networking. Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
definitely.
Absolutely.
And last question I have for you, Rashmi, and you in this business, right? You have to approach a lot of businesses. So my question to you is, how do you personally handle rejection, whether from clients, partners, or investors? Because this is
Yeah.
something that everyone has to go through in their life, regardless.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy. Absolutely. And I think we have to accept that rejection is inevitable. And no matter how much how much effort and perseverance we put into a project, there can no as a feedback is something that you will receive over time, right? So sometimes it could be timing, sometimes it's alignment with the business needs, sometimes it's resources, or it's their priorities. So you just can't judge. Some clients are empathetic enough, they come back and give us a proper feedback as to why our proposal didn't go ahead. But in many cases we just hear that no one, unfortunately, you are not good successful at this point in time, and that's it. So you have to deal with it, right? So sometimes it's an opportunity as well to think that okay, we could have done things differently. Where possible, we definitely go back to the client and ask them for feedback, because that will help us improve over time. But yeah, I try not to take it too personally, and then I move forward and we try to apply the learnings. If we are given the feedback, definitely we try and apply those learnings in future proposals, and we try to focus on the long term vision and purpose.
Yeah, definitely. And what if you don't get any feedback? Then what's your approach on like how could you learn from the experience? You would say for your team.
Team, especially, I think what I can say is that as for the team and for us, it's a learning curve. I think there are so many different variety of projects that come in, and if you're not, so sometimes we try and reflect ourselves that okay, maybe it is the cost factor, maybe it is the timing, maybe it is the project management that didn't work for them. So in that case, we are just trying to preempt, or it's sometimes even a guesswork, right? Unless you have some kind of analysis or some kind of feedback, it is difficult to say exactly what was going on in the client's mind. So I really appreciate the clients who say no and come back to us with reasons, even if they're not true, but at least they help us then move forward and apply those learnings in practice.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rashmi. I really enjoyed talking to you. There's so many quick golden nuggets. I loved your four key like mantras that you read every morning. That's really good. And I think one of my favorite key takeaway would be like embracing the awkwardness and still pushing through that. I think
Yes,
that's golden because some people just in that awkwardness, they'll just quit, you know. So I
we'll
think
just get
quite
clear. Yeah.
yeah. And for our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you comment below what's your biggest key takeaway from this episode. And I'll link Rashmi's all social media handles in the show notes. So if you can follow her as well and ask her any pharmaceutical or compliance questions if you have. So what's the best way to reach out to you? Is it on LinkedIn or
LinkedIn, definitely. Yes, absolutely.
perfect? So thank you once again to your listeners, and thank you so much, Rashmi, for joining us. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much, Siddharth, for your time, and it was a pleasure speaking to you as well.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.